Hey all, welcome to the third open mic night, I believe.
Yes.
We are all here to read our stories. We've got about 14 readers tonight. We're also trying to advertise. We have a writers group here at the Phoenixville Library. We try to get together twice a month to edit and critique and read aloud and basically just get feedback on our stories. We've got a good group. We've got a couple of them here tonight, so I hope you enjoy their stories. Hope we enjoy yours. I have been given strict instructions that you have 5 minutes, no more, maybe a little less if you like it. When you are getting to the 5-minute mark, you're going to hear this go off. I'm sorry, it's going to be rude, but when you get to the 6-minute mark, that's when we start heckling. 7 minutes, we throw things. Because they stupidly put me in charge, I'm going to go first tonight, and after that, we're just going to go alphabetically. So, I suppose I should be fair and give myself a timer.
Who are you?
I'm Eric. I run the group. Alright, I'm Eric. Sorry, I probably should have mentioned that.
Hi, Eric.
List, so, hey, Declan. I run the group. I have a BA in English Lit, and that's about all the credentials I have. And I run the email list, and that's all the credentials I need.
That should be enough.
Alright, here we go. This is the start of a short story called Good Help. Grandma spooned another helping of mashed potatoes onto my plate and went back to stand in the corner, never breathing. Her glassy eyes stared straight ahead, waiting for her next command. She didn't care, but I thanked her anyway. Before she died, she'd always drilled politeness into me. Now that she was gone, it didn't feel right to let those manners lapse. So I thanked her, and tried not to wrinkle my nose at the odd medicinal smell she put off as she worked. Stop that, Agnes, my mother said, wrapping her plate with her fork. It's not right to talk to them like that. But it's Grandma, I said. She sniffed. Arthur, I told you it wouldn't be a good idea to have your mother in the house. It's giving your daughter ideas. Daddy lowered the papers he was reading, his spoon of soup halfway to his lips. Deborah, you know I couldn't stand to see the old girl out in the field with the others. She never did like breaking a sweat. She doesn't sweat. Not anymore. You were always too close to her. Daddy's hand gripped the soup spoon a little tighter, but he kept his voice level. Agnes needed her around. She loved the old woman. A clean cut would have been easier for her. That's not her grandmother anymore. She's just the help. And my knife clattered to the table, my pork roast forgotten. That is my grandma. Don't talk about my grandma like that. Don't be mean to her. A prickly smile slid onto my mother's face. Gladys, she said, raising her glass. A little more wine, please? Grandma gave a shiver and broke her unnatural stillness to lurch to the sideboard. She picked up the carafe of red wine and brought it to Mother's side. Go ahead and pour, Gladys. Grandma lifted the pitcher and went to fill Mother's glass. Before it was even halfway full, Mother's fingers loosened from around the stem. The crystal flute slipped to the floor, shattering. I let out a small whimper. Oh dear. Gladys, go ahead and clean that up before it stains. The smile on my mother's face grew even wider as Daddy buried his face back in his papers. Grandma bent over and started to pick up the pieces of the broken glass. She either did not notice or didn't care when the shards cut into her leathery skin. No blood came from the gashes, so maybe it didn't hurt. I hoped it didn't hurt. I met my mother's eyes. They were sharp, waiting for me to make a comment, waiting to pounce on what she saw as inappropriate behavior. I didn't want to fight, so I lowered my head, trying to focus on my mashed potatoes. I knew Grandma followed the recipe from her old recipe book when she made them today, but they didn't taste the same as they had when she was alive. Something had changed when she was brought back to work. Something always did. The ritual the house's raisers performed was supposed to be perfect, but something was always missing. I could tell from the looks Mother was shooting Daddy across the table that there would be an argument soon. It was never fun when Mother and Daddy fought. They'd always try to make me pick sides. So I ate as quickly as I could. As soon as the last bite was gone from my plate, I asked to be excused. Mother gave a quick nod, her eyes still locked on Daddy, waiting for him to put his papers down so they could get into it. Daddy was always looking at his papers. He said it was a lot of work keeping the living alive these days. Mother knew what Daddy did was important, so she always waited until he was done before she yelled at him. I'm going to go to bed, I said. Can Grandma come up and brush my hair? That made my mother's head whip around. That's not your I mean Gladys. Sorry, Mother. I mean, can Gladys come? Mollified, she glanced down at where Grandma was still scrubbing the carpet. Oh, leave off, you useless thing. That's as clean as it's going to get. Go take care of that rat's nest Agnes has been cultivating. Grandma straightened up and followed me out of the dining room. As soon as we were out of sight, I took her hand and pulled her behind me up the carved wooden stairs. Her skin was cold, but I didn't mind. A minute to spare, take note. So. All right, that's me. Up next, we are just going to go down the list in alphabetical order. So we have first David Bodarky. He was, sorry if I'm pronouncing anyone's name wrong, please feel free to correct me. Beautiful. Was raised in Phoenixville and educated at help yourself to the cookies, please.
Already did.
Raised in Phoenixville and educated at Devon Preparatory School and the University of Pittsburgh, good call, where he studied language and literature and wrote a BA thesis on Roman and Chinese poetry, which included his own translations of the Latin of Ovid and classical Chinese of Tu Fu. He also published award-winning original poetry and essays that have appeared in various collegiate magazines and journals in Pennsylvania, and done work as a professional translator and anthologist of Chinese poetry in Western Europe, European vernaculars. Breaking out the thesaurus here. Spanish, Portuguese, and French. He is currently making a career as a library assistant at the Phoenixville Public Library, and no ambition of becoming an author save that of living to think and read has any influence with him. All right, David.
Quite a bit of credentials.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
I'm not used to raising my voice today for shushing the kids. So I have a few short poems that I'd like to share with you. I'm going to do something a little different. I expect everybody tonight is going to share some mature work. Because I'm a millennial and I have a pathological need to be different, I'm going to be reading some poems that I wrote from the ages of 16 to 24. I am now 29 years old, and I would just like to note that I'm not ashamed of anything that I've written here. Only of the self that's in them. Okay, so the first one begins with an epigraph, ironically, from the end of a poem. Quote, "They, looking back, all the eastern side beheld of paradise, so late their happy seat, waved over by that flaming brand, the gate with dreadful faces thronged in fiery arms. Some natural tears they dropped, but wiping them soon. The world was all before them, where to choose their place of rest, and Providence their guide. They, hand in hand with wandering steps and slow through Eden, took their solitary way." I didn't write it, it's from John Milton. That's the end of Paradise Lost, and so it begins shortly afterwards. "In the sweet time of renewal, the woods are in leaf and the birds in song, each in its own language. Following the new song's verses, thus men do well to take their ease with whatever they most desire. From where beauty and goodness dwell, I see neither message nor seal, and so I neither sleep nor laugh. Nor do I dare start anything until I can know for certain if all is as I have asked. Our love goes along in this way, as the branch of the hawthorn does, where it is trembling on the tree all night in the rain and the frost, until next day when the sun shines through the branches and the green leaves. Still I remember one morning when we made a truce to our war, and when she gave so great a gift to me, her gallant love and ring. Still, God, let me live long enough to get my hands under her cloak. For I don't worry their language may keep me from my good neighbor, since I know how it goes with words, with short talk that runs on and on. While such types go on about love, we have a piece of it, and the night." The next poem begins, "One possessed with a rosy cheek, the white skin like a touchstone, men have contemplated in her beauties that are not exhausted. Beauty is in every part of her, a place often returned to. Some of it is attained and some of it is being born. And each time you return to it, it is praised in the return. So drink to the face of the moon, copiously, without bad temper." And next a short lyric. "Sweet laurel blooms fall unenjoyed, vague hills dissolve into night void. The moonrise startles birds to sing, their twitter fills the dale with spring." And next I wrote two versions of the same poem because I wasn't satisfied with either one. So the first one goes, what riot do crows run, veiling the setting sun? As far as eyes can see, there are houses 2 or 3. The garden trees don't know all men gone but the crow. In full bloom they appear, as when spring came last year. The garden at dusk, the crows fly unbound. In waste, 2 or 3 homes dot the vast ground. The trees in court, unknowing all were gone, still bloom the same flowers when spring comes around. And next, after making her toilet, she ascended a tall tower and leaned alone on the banister, looking at a long river. 1,000 sails had passed, but none was the one she desired. Amorous glances the setting sun cast, while the river water flowed endlessly without haste. She felt heartbroken looking at the isle, overgrown with clover fern without taste. And finally, 2 short poems about grief. These were written shortly after the death of a close friend of mine from drug addiction. Number 1. The cart is far away and horses slow. You linger in my mind wherever you go. When you go there on your westward ride, I'd like to be a shadow by your side. Yet shadow dims when you remain in shade. Please stay in the light where shadow won't fade. Number 2. Oh, from where comes the autumn breeze that sends wild geese off sad and drear? At dawn it enters courtyard trees. The lonely man's the first to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Up next, Connie Canson, correct?
Yes.
Beautiful. Not beautiful. Up next, we have one of our own, Joan Brown. She attends our writers group. She has lived in Phoenixville since 1974, has been a member of the Phoenix Writers since September 2011. Her favorite subjects to write about are 2 groups of lowest level employees that serve the general public in the United States, nursing assistants and members of our volunteer armed services. These 2 groups have similar tasks in that they deal with life and death decisions every day, and most people have no idea how they spend their work days. So, Joan.
Thank you. Okay, this is a selection about one of my youngest nursing assistants. Her name's Hannah, and lots of times people come right out of high school and they are a nursing assistant, and this is what they do during the night when they're at work. Hannah walked up to her friend Aisha and held out her 2 fingers. Aisha handed over her half-smoked cigarette and Hannah inhaled. Bad night already, huh? Aisha smiled as she took back her cigarette for one last puff. Tossing their butts into the outside container, Hannah, Aisha, and the other 2 CNAs just coming on duty walked from the dark, chilly spring night into the brightly lit hallway of the facility. Marquise wasn't home before I left for work. Grandma Louisa said she'd listen for Samuel if he woke up before Marquise got home. Ever since we moved in with his grandma, I'm never sure when he's coming home. You got yourself a pretty reliable husband, Hannah. He's probably out with his friends and forgot the time. He knows you have backup with either his grandmother or Aunt Gracie. Yeah, but he used to always want to say goodbye before I left for work all night. I don't like leaving our baby with his relatives as last-minute babysitters. Girl, they are not babysitters. They are your family now. Aisha raised her finely sculpted eyebrows as if to make the point that they had discussed this, quote, family situation before. Text me what's up on Seriously Sad 7 when you get a chance, Aisha said as she got off the elevator on the 2nd floor. As Hannah got off on the 7th floor, she walked into the unfinished business from the last shift. Sylvia sat in her wheelchair with a huge puddle underneath her. She smiled and said, "Hi, beautiful. Can you take me to the bathroom?" Sylvia called everyone she liked beautiful, but the list of people she liked and would allow to care for her changed nightly, depending on her mood. Her chubby little feet hung down in front of her and were bare, swollen, and purple. Nobody had put her foot pedals on the wheelchair all day. "Hi, Sylvia. Give me a minute to get organized and I'll change you. Looks like you've already gone to the bathroom." As Hannah stashed her shoulder bag in the closet at the nursing station, Francis lifted his piece of pizza he was eating in greeting and called out a welcome in Yoruba. "Hey, Kuwabo, Hannah!" Francis was Nigerian and was teaching Hannah simple words in Yoruba. She had a German mom and taught him simple words in German when they had a few minutes of free time throughout the night. Francis had been a teacher in Nigeria before he won a green card lottery and came to the U.S. Now he worked double shifts all the time so he could send money back home and support his American girlfriend in Delaware. Have some pizza. It's nursing assistant week, and the nurse Debbie bought us all pizza. Frances opened a large box of cold pizza with the cheese on top looking picked over and greasy. You mean Debbie from day shift, Frances? You're eating pizza that's been sitting there since day shift? Hannah, this pizza is so good. You worry too much. Frances wiped his hands on his navy scrub pants and pointed to the assignment sheet for the night. Lucky night. We have 4 aides. You, me, Jerome, and Michelle. I already did water cups last shift. Easy night for us. Hannah watched Frances dance down the hallway, African music playing on his phone in his pocket. Using your phone while working was forbidden, but the nursing supervisors may as well have told their employees not to breathe. When spending 8 hours doing such hard physical work that required lifting help or just someone to rant to, anyone's smartphone was an essential tool. A text to your friend for help was like an old-time walkie-talkie. Hannah walked down the hallway and got 2 towels, a clean hospital gown, and a washcloth off the clean cart to freshen up Sylvia. She took a flannel bath blanket with her to cover the puddle under Sylvia until she had time to get the bucket. Come with me, Sylvie Mae. Let's get you cleaned up and off to bed. Hannah wheeled her into the communal bathroom and stopped the chair before the toilet. Sylvia could usually stand and turn with some help, but her feet looked really swollen. Hold on to the railing, Sylvia. Sylvia stood with her butt barely off the sopping wet wheelchair cushion. Her disposable diaper was so wet it came apart in little round absorbent bubble pieces as Hannah skillfully removed it, washed her bottom, and sat her down on the toilet to see if she had any more to come out. As Sylvia sat there, Hannah washed her face under her arms, put on a new gown, and combed her hair out of her face. She took a small bottle of baby lotion out of her scrub pocket and massaged it into Sylvia's feet as she sat there. Okay, girlfriend, off to bed. Elliot, one of the residents on the floor, whose mind was intact but whose body was failing, waited for Hannah outside the bathroom. I never got my ham and cheese sandwich for my snack last night. Can you get me a sandwich? Hannah knew that by now, at about 11:30 p.m., that sandwich that came up on a cart from the kitchen about 7 p.m. was long gone. Some of the 72 residents on this floor were sneaky and sat just waiting to steal food off of the snack carts to take to their room as backup food if they didn't like their dinner meal. It was a long time from 5 p.m. dinner until 8 a.m. breakfast. Sorry, Elliot, the kitchen is closed now. I can't get a sandwich for you. How about a piece of pizza? She hated to give him pizza that she wouldn't touch herself, but knew he would sit at the nursing station all night long complaining about his sandwich if he didn't get something he wanted to eat. They had small packs of animal crackers and 2 packs of graham crackers in the pantry as snacks. Nobody ever wanted to eat them. Jerome and Michelle stood eating pizza as Hannah got a piece onto a paper towel for Elliot. That's our pizza, Hannah. Don't give it to him. He might not be allowed to have pizza. Michelle didn't like to give residents the food, which occasionally was gifted to the aides from relatives or residents. It was a long night, and the only food available if you didn't bring your lunch were the vending machines in the break room, which were poorly stocked, expensive, and lots of times stole your money. He eats ham and cheese sandwiches every night. He's not lactose intolerant or he wouldn't have the cheese. That white bread in his sandwich is definitely not gluten-free. I'm giving him my piece of pizza. While Hannah had been changing and putting Sylvia to bed, the other 3 had picked their assignments for the shift. Michelle had picked Hannah's favorite one and given Hannah the one that nobody wanted. It was an assignment that had a woman who wanted to get out of bed all night long and go to the bathroom. Her bed was alarmed with a pressure-sensitive alarm because she had fallen out of bed so many times. Whoever had that assignment would be the person responsible on paper if they didn't get to her before she fell out of bed. Taking care of Sylvia and cleaning up her puddle had taken about half an hour, and Sylvia wasn't even on Hannah's assignment. Shall I just stop? Okay.
Thanks, Jill. Harsh but fair. All right, up next we have another Joan. Joan Kaufman, or Joanne, thank you, is a restorative nurse coordinator and has numerous articles appearing in Marion Publications Advanced News magazines, serving nursing and allied healthcare professionals. She wrote her first poem when in 1st grade during a ducking cover drill.
That's right.
On March 3rd, 1954, here in town, a pretty 22-year-old Marguerite Chioda was reportedly abducted while walking home from a pre-Lenten dance at the Polish American Citizens Club on High Street. 3 days later, her body was found at the bottom of an abandoned outhouse in Schuylkill Township. This mysterious case remains unsolved to this day. And as the years pass, the memory of her local life and sensational death seems to be fading away. So last year, I wrote this poem, Ode to Marguerite, 60 years and counting, a whodunit. She was last seen wearing a tan blouse with a red rose at the throat. She was last seen leaving the house, wearing brown suede pumps for dancing to Shrove Tuesday musical notes. She was last seen crossing the Gay Street Bridge during happier times. She was last seen parting with friends. What shall we give up? Lenten bells chime. She was last seen in a busybody mirror being snatched away. Here starts the crime. She was last seen by the one who preferred thrusting a knife than shooting a gun. She was last seen fighting for her life. Quick, he thought, must keep one's wits about one during a selfish, molesting, murderous run. She was last seen by the hands that threw her into an outhouse pit. She was last seen found in that watery hole, mortally wounded. She couldn't crawl out to save her soul. She was last seen by people who had no business coming in and out of that post-mortem room. She was last seen laid out as a bride, awaiting her heavenly groom. She was last seen by the pallbearers being carried into the church where a solemn high requiem mass was heard at 10 and then. She was last seen being buried atop a hill overlooking the steel town of Phoenixville.
Joanne, that was morbid, yeah. All right, up next is Christine Emmert. She is a writer, actress, director, and educator. She holds a master's in humanities. Her belief in the arts and the transformers of life goes deep. The piece she adapted with Catherine Mallanday, The Yellow Wallpaper, was performed to enthusiastic audiences at the Philadelphia Fringe last summer. Working for the outreach program for Hopewell Furnace, Christine took her own Fragile Freedoms. That's a great piece title, not Her Fragile Freedoms. About a woman fighting for the vote to the Susan B. Anthony House last July. Her novel, The Nun's Dragon, is presently out in print and on Amazon Kindle. So, Christine.
Thank you. All right. I brought my book, of which there are copies over there. I'm saying this very quickly. I'm not reading from it. So, I'm reading from my blog. Can everybody hear me? Mm-hmm. Good. Okay, writing and what is written. It's amazing how many people tell me they have a book in them. They probably do. We all have stories to tell. I once bought my husband a card that pronounced, "Our love story is the best." Understood after that is because it's ours. But actually it's a mundane story when told to others. To ourselves we remember the anxiousness of the passion, the question as to what it implied, and the joinings that set off asteroids, meteors, and falling stars. But to others, it's simply two people who met in an anthropology class and decided to stay together. What is written down does not reveal the full emotion. It can. Emotions are tricky fellows. They simply aren't contained in sentences, but spill and seep. When people tell me they have a book in them, I say, write it. Mostly they don't, because they understand that writing is more than what is written. It hints, it teases, it implies other truths. That's what defines a writer, not the story, but the telling of it, so that other people feel it is part of their story. Okay. This I wrote upon his death. Robin Williams, A Comet in the Night. Robin Williams would tire any comet in the universe in his trajectory through his life. He was bright, quick, and definitely cosmic. I wanted to act, but he acted, he wrote, he directed himself, all in the same moment. One of my favorite scenes of his was a quiet one. Oh yes, he could slow down to the speed of light on occasion. It was with Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting, when he tried to describe the difference between knowing things from books and actually seeing the painting, walking through the foreign streets, attending the opera. It is the difference we all feel when we come up cold against a real Van Gogh or a real Robin Williams. How lucky we were to have him. He was truly of another space. Outer space, maybe. Special space, definitely. Okay, loosed and floating. No one asked Lazarus how it was, or why he arrived back breathless. Oh, he looked stunned. Why he was without comment, nor thanking his good friend Jesus, who called him forth from the tomb. Well, afterwards, he sat quietly in a corner, his eyes whirling like comets from the night sky. When his sister Mary inquired why his heart was racing faster than the great cat across the land, he only smiled, and it took a moment to say, oh, I was loosed and floating. Now I'm caught again in life's net. And his voice rose like the wind before the final storm. And then he reached out for wine and bread and life itself. The mind of the artist. When I look at the artwork of my husband, I realize there's part of him I can only know through his art. It is his private space that creates this world where some have half an ear and others have 3 or 4, and where one eye is round and the other is square. Oh, and the colors, they move around the canvas in a way that does not approximate what most of us see. Obviously, he's not the first artist to rearrange the rational world in his own mystical way, but I live with him. I've done now for almost 40 years, and we talk about life, and we travel, and we argue over books and what to have for dinner. But I cannot argue with him about his art. That is his private space, where I'm only invited in as a spectator to delight and to ponder what moves him beyond the wheels I see turning. Okay, last one. Red wine and happiness. There are all those stories about how artists are drinkers, and even how they like to blur the rules others live by for a healthy life. Also, stories about how one glass of red wine improves that healthy life. Well, I don't know about blurring lines, but red wine sitting in the garden at sunset, with my head filled with half-finished poems and stories, my dog at my feet, my husband at my side. That's as close as I come to happiness in this messy life. There's little we can depend upon. A glass of dry red wine with its clarity of taste helps steady a wobbly universe for me. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Greg Fox. He has taught writing at Phoenixville Area Middle School since February 2000, and to date has neither hopes nor plans of being published. He is currently working on a collection of short stories and vignettes about growing up Catholic in post-World War II America called Fathers, Sons, and Ghosts. Greg?
I don't have time for the introduction, so I'll just get right to the story. Some of my students are here tonight. It's rated PG, but I see your parents are with you. So.
Dang it!
This is called The Promise. It's a little love story. Do you have the ring? Jordan asked for the third time since he walked out to the podium inside the Jared R. Jennings American Legion post. I have it, Tommy answered. Relax, everything's going to be just fine. Jordan took a deep breath, one of the last he would breathe as a single man. He tugged at the hem of his tuxedo jacket and he counted the familiar faces surrounding him. 121 in all, including his own mother and father. Almost every person he knew had been invited to witness the promise Jordan and Kathleen were about to make to each other. It would be legally recorded, documented, and notarized by the state of Pennsylvania. And if God could pull himself away from his business at the church long enough to listen in, the promise would be held to an even higher set of expectations. Jordan was so much in love with Kathleen, and what was there not to love? She was beautiful, curvy and petite, with flaming red hair that danced like fire in the wind. Jordan's friends often commented how Kathleen possessed the prettiest nose they had ever seen on a woman. A British nose, Jordan boasted. She was educated and smart and showed kindness and compassion for every living creature. Jordan knew he loved her the moment he met her at his ex-girlfriend's engagement party. Do you like Italian food? To which Kathleen replied, is the Pope Catholic? And there was no turning back. It was unbelievably simple and wonderful and quite magical. A Chopin prelude was playing on the old honky-tonk piano when Kathleen entered with her two bridesmaids. She strolled a short distance to where Jordan and Tommy stood with the Honorable Timothy J. McCafferty, magistrate and judge for the County of Delaware. Kathleen just stared straight ahead while Jordan gazed down at her in awe, thinking he had never seen her so beautiful. She was perfectly poised with a crown of purple lilacs and a white lace gown stretched over her hourglass figure and ample bosoms. Jordan could hear the women gasping and the men whispering to each other. Perhaps it was the power of the moment, or maybe it was the 3 shots of Johnny Walker he and the judge shared at the bar only 15 minutes earlier, but it took a fist in the spine from Tommy to get Jordan breathing again. The judge guessed the couple was in a bit of a hurry, so he wasted a little time on introductions. Will you, Kathleen, take Jordan as your husband, in sound mind and body, to love and cherish, blah, 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 for as long as you shall live? I will, Kathleen answered. The words came out of her mouth so swiftly and softly that Jordan was not quite sure he even heard them. But Magistrate McCafferty gave a polite smile and looked pleased enough to turn and face Jordan. Give me the ring, Jordan whispered to Tommy. And will you, Jordan, take Kathleen as your wife, soberly and in sound mind and body, to love and cherish, blah, 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 for as long as you shall live? For but a flick of an eyelash, Jordan stumbled, an unmeasurable amount of time on most wristwatches. When he heard the words, for as long as you shall live, he understood it to mean that after a life with Kathleen, there might be no life at all. Never before had he been asked to enter into a contract for which there was no final payment stub. In that split second in which he hesitated, no, not even an entire second, but a fraction of a second, noticeable to no one in the room, Jordan's entire romantic life passed before him. In less time than it takes a beam from a dollar store flashlight to travel 186,000 miles, he recalled every crush, flirtation, romance, infatuation, liaison, and yes, one-night stand. Every could have, would have, and should have passed by him in a Faustian feast of female faces. But who else would Jordan possibly choose in exchange for his soul? He saw Julie Newmar, the original Catwoman from the 1960s Batman series, reruns on TV Land. Tall and tempting, purring like a perfectly tuned Boss 302 Mustang engine. Next was Terry Garr as Inga in Young Frankenstein. He saw Elizabeth Hurley, and her skin-tight devil costume and that English chick accent, just like that way too young schoolgirl Jordan met while he was staying at the youth hostel in the Isle of Wight. "You must come to Totland Bay," she pleaded, but he could not, would not, should not. Jordan saw Debbie D'Onofrio's mother Angela, 40 years old and hot to trot, sticking her tongue way down Jordan's throat while her daughter was upstairs getting ready for the prom. "If this doesn't work out for you," she hinted, "I should still be awake when you drop her off tonight." He saw his college girlfriend Cindy, how he messed that one up. She broke his heart 2 days before Christmas. He saw Britney Spears and that other blonde in the yellow dress who bought him a drink at the Black Banana the night before, and Scarlett Johansson, the face that launched 1,000 movies and burned the topless towers of Hollywood. "Oh, sweet Scarlett," Jordan beckoned, "make me immortal with a kiss." Then he saw Kathleen. She was still facing the judge, but was now looking up at Jordan from the corner of her right eye. "I will," Jordan answered, and he slipped the ring onto her finger. "By the powers vested in me by the state of Pennsylvania," said Magistrate McCafferty, "I pronounce you man and wife. You two lovebirds may kiss at your leisure." Kathleen turned to Jordan, looked up at him, and kissed him gently on the lips, then flung her arms around his neck to speak her first words as his loving wife. "You didn't answer right away, you jerk," she said. "What the hell were you thinking?"
Thank you very much. Up next we have Virginia Gunther. She's the author of the early 19th century historical novel, Reverberation, who writes as V.D. Holmes, has worked as an editor, writer, researcher, and publisher. Virginia.
I hate to follow you. You were really good. These are the opening paragraphs of the sequel of my sequel to Reverberation, the novel. April 15th, 1832, Liberia, West Africa. An oppressive West African jungle heat sucked the perspiration out of Joseph Conshohocken as he concentrated on a single flame of the ceremonial fire that blazed in the center of the village palaver house. He watched as it rose to a thin thread of brilliance, then ruptured into an aureole of indeterminable fragments. The shape-changing remnants flashed into oblivion as the flame dropped back to the stacked wood that birthed it. His eyes burned from the glare, and for relief he looked to the exaggerated shadows that fire cast around the huge room. The near-naked bodies of rum-drunk natives fractured the reflected images as they stomped the earth with their bare feet, thrust clenched fists into the air, bent and twisted their writhing, dripping, shining bodies to the tortured rhythms of frenzied drummers. He stared at their glistening black hair and black skin, and knew that, in spite of his learning and acquired manners, his physical appearance verified his blood kinship to these savages. As guest of honor, Joseph stood next to the tribal chief, King Harry. The rum continued to pass from hand to hand, and although he wished to abstain, he was obliged to drink with his host. The celebration was for him. Joseph Conshohocken was a West African coastal trader who had just agreed to establish a trading factory for the accumulation and distribution of goods to and from the interior. The natives were ecstatic, as the black white man was known to be fair, and his business would bring status as well as money to their village. The negotiations had been arduous as the chief, his sons, and headmen desired to be in the slave trade, and Joseph, a fugitive slave on his home soil, refused. He was all too familiar with the caravans of yoked and manacled natives who were marched for weeks from deep in the interior to the ocean. He had seen the primitive enclosures where they were imprisoned with barely room to squat until slave ships arrived to take them to Europe and the Americas. Many nights he remembered being caught in the center of a barracoon and pushing against packed bodies as he tore at his shackles and fought his way to the side where he could breathe fresh air. There was much money to be made in the sale of human flesh, but he and his Caucasian partner, James Chatsworth, would not share in it.
Their vessels would continue to bring staples from America for the colonists and natives, and return with shipments of camwood, palm oil, and ivory to be sold in Norfolk and Philadelphia. The fire died down, and most of the villagers returned to their huts. A few sat cross-legged in a corner of the roofed, open-sided palaver house, where all matters, social, governmental, and commercial, were resolved. They smoked and talked, at times gesturing wildly as their voices rose, then fell to a whisper. Joseph knew they were discussing the money to be made from his factory. Before he retired, King Harry presented Joseph with a bed of animal skins, which the chief's slaves piled on the platform. The skins smelled of beast and human filth, and Joseph feared there were many tiny unwanted inhabitants nestled in the twisted strands of knotted hair, which clung to the time-hardened flesh. The dealings of the day and night had exhausted him, and he ignored the possible onslaught of blood-sucking insects as he stretched out on his makeshift bed and fell into a deep sleep. Joseph was awakened by an urgent yank on his arm and an incomprehensible tirade in native patois. King Harry stood over him, waving frantically and shouting that the town was under attack from a tribe of cannibals, and his villagers were fleeing. The terrified screams of women and children intermingled with baritone shouts and involuntary moans as the thud of war clubs crushing bone resonated around the palaver house. As Joseph leapt to his feet, his first thought was to run with the townspeople, but his native instinct for self-preservation convinced him to stay. He had successfully done business with several of the tribes along the coast and throughout the immediate interior. His best chance for survival was to be recognized, taken prisoner by the invaders, and held for ransom. Did I do that in less than 5 minutes? I figured, I timed myself. I couldn't believe I did it in less than 5 minutes.
So about 10 seconds. Any final word? All right, we've reached the second page of Writers, so a brief pause. Once again, want to point out that we have flyers over there for our writers group. We meet the second Thursday, I can figure this out, calendars and get along. Second Thursday and third Tuesday of every month. We have editing, we have read-alouds, we have everything you want to shape yourself and grow as a writer, and we tend to have a good time. So thank you for bearing with me. Up next we have Dagmar Hole. Am I getting that right? Yes. She is a longtime resident of Chester County. She is a self-taught storyteller and sometimes poet, a gardener, teacher, and lifelong student of life, especially in the fields of psychology, anthropology, and sociology. Dagmar is an immigrant from southern Germany to the heartbeat of Philadelphia. She has the opportunity to be published in a manual but had to pay for it, so she declined that offer. Good call. Currently, she is engaged in bringing awareness about the Lenni Lenape ancestors of this area to Kimbrut and Waldorf students through stories and other teachings. Dagmar.
I said all those things so you'd like me about sociology and psychology and other things. Okay, the pregnant pause. There were a series of very large machines in my friend's yard where they had begun to tear up the earth to build an addition for Enid, my friend's mother-in-law. Suddenly something lands on my arm, and I brush her off as anyone would do when a bug lands on you unexpectedly. I brush her off absent-mindedly, and then I turn around and look to see her, the long body, the terrestrial face. How could anything look so, well, as though she's trying out for Star Trek's next series? It's so odd, but I'm happy to see her. She's so weird and so beautiful. Michael, my friend, the earth shifter, notices her right away and says, "Ah, she's pregnant." "Oh yeah," he says, "she's loaded. I figure maybe she's carrying 10, 20 eggs at the most." I didn't edit this, so I'm stumbling over my handwriting, sorry. But here we go. He begins to stroke her and calling her endearing names like sweetie, mama, and yes, also darling. He is this bug's midwife, I think. He does what I would have done had he not been there. He reaches out with his massive and gentle hands toward her, urging her to trust his skin and be her rescuer. "Let's get you away from all this noise to someplace safer," he says. We glide to the nearest bush where she quickly settles in. We stare at her. Around her face there is a glimmer of iridescent colors, purple and green, the colors of which Elvis may have made a suit for himself. Her square jaw is out of this world. Her set eyes are searching for something, and suddenly she turns square on and stares at us. Well, she stares at me. "What are you staring at?" I think. "Yeah," she says, "I'm looking for a place to deposit this load, but I'm in no hurry." Michael says to me, "She'll die she'll die after she's done her job." We are looking at each other, she and I, when he says this, and inside of myself, I register how both a tinge of cruelty that nature could be set upon her could be, and this creepy feeling like I'm a kid about 9 years old who can only then comment out loud, "Oh, that's really awful." And I feel ridiculous, at odds with the fact that she is staring at me. She is living out her life not aware of her future. Then suddenly she's preening herself. A pregnant pause, a moment of self-indulgence, every pregnant woman's right for a job well done, past, present, and future. She has her twiggy-like legs bent, and sure enough, she is cleaning her feet, nibbling her toes. I don't know, but I'm happy for her. She's giving herself some more time to enjoy herself before her death. Her little psychedelic head is bobbing up and down. I wonder how her tiny feet, how tiny her feet must be. I wonder how many of her little ones will actually survive. What are the odds, I wonder? I want to ask Michael this, for certainly he would know. He watches things. But before I can formulate the question, he shares with me how he had seen another one of these beauties give birth on a handrail in Florida Keys, and how it took several months before they hatched, and how they are ready to go the minute they are born, and the mother, meanwhile, has long been gone. I suppose they may have guardian angels for these types of situations in the world of insects, especially when orphaned upon guardrails, being subject to random human acts of contact. You have to wonder. Practice random acts of kindness. Savor the subtle moments between those who live their lives so remote from ours and were given a moment to connect, to just wonder about each other, and then go on your way. It's a praying mantis. Thank you.
All right, I was going to try and say something in German, but high school was a very long time ago. So, danke, I guess.
Danke, bitte.
There we go.
Das ist gut.
He's got it. All right, we are jumping back in the alphabet because Google has failed me yet again. Ken Hissner is up next. He's a writer for Doghouse Boxing, a boxing publication on the web. He has covered and written articles for 9 years. Tonight he's going to speak on his time spent with former world boxing champion Muhammad Ali, entitled Laughs with Ali.
This was a boxing gymnasium, this will be very easy, but among you writers, which it's a little more difficult. Now I did get through the Dale Carnegie course. Primarily, I didn't know what I was supposed to do here tonight. Whether I would read this or more or less, you know, just kind of say it. Do you have to read? You have to read, so. Back in 1973, Muhammad Ali had lived at 70th and Overbrook in Philadelphia section, and had just moved to Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Well, I was in sales at the time, and I was down in Center City, 16th and Chestnut, and Ali had just lost to Ken Norton. He had his jaw broken in their first of 3 fights. I was across the street, and I saw this crowd, and among this here crowd was Ali. I thought somebody may have jumped off a building. So I walked over, and there's Ali. Now, for you younger people here, there used to be a show called Amos and Andy. And if you can picture Algonquin J. Calhoun, this black lawyer with the glasses and the hat, it looked like him talking to Ali. So he says to Ali, next time you fight Norton, be a man, not a boy. And Ali said, did you call me Roy? That's how Ali would rhyme things. So we're all laughing except for this guy. He didn't think it was so funny. He said, I said, be a man, not a boy. He said, play with him like a toy? So then we were all laughing. And so 2 weeks later in Daily News, I see a newspaper clipping of his old house and his new house in Cherry Hill. So I went over and I knocked on the door. His second of 4 wives, Alinda, answered the door. I said, can I speak to the champ? She said, just a minute. I figured she probably wouldn't come back, but she came back and said, come on in. As I walked in the vestibule, there was a Muslim flag, being a Muslim, obviously, a picture of a horse, being from Kentucky, Louisville, and a plaque from the Cherry Lily, thank you for contributions. So if you don't get the first word in on Ali, you won't get a word in. And he'll speak probably 5 times faster than the normal person. Good-looking guy, a very bright guy. So as I see him coming, this is an Rancher guy, I could see him coming toward me, and I said, why don't you give Doug Jones a rematch? Why don't you give Ron Lyle a rematch? Did Louis Rodriguez, your stablemate, teach everything you knew? And then he takes over. In the meantime, somebody walks in with a young kid, and he was a friend of Ali's, Bobby Goodman, who I would later meet 41 years later, last year, and I said, gee, you must have been that little kid. He said, how old do you think I am? I said, I have no idea. He was 75 years old. Here, I meet him 41 years later last year. He was head of Madison Square Garden, and I would do a story on him. Getting back to Ali, up in Deer Lake, near Reading, on Route 61, Ali had his camp. And the picture there is me, back in 77, about 100 pounds lighter, but more hair and long sideburns. And I would say to Ali, why are you fighting all these bums? And the look that he gives me is something like, what you talking about? You know, was it Lewis or? Willis. Willis, right. So, anyway, but what a character. So we're sitting across from each other on these sofas, and he says, where you from, boy? I said, from a small town called Lafayette Hill. And as I'm saying it, the person sitting with him whispers in his ear. Ali goes to get up, say that you're me. Ali goes to get up and he says, hold me back, hold me back. That's where Frazier lives. Joe Frazier lives. So, but he doesn't scare you, because he just, you know, Frazier would scare you. I've been in his presence more than once. Anyway, so Ali says, what are you doing up here? I said, I'm going to go up to Scranton tonight to watch the fights. He said, who's fighting? I said, Marty Capasso, Italian kid from outside of Philly, is fighting a guy from New York named Ali Allen. Well, he says, Ali. Ali. So in other words, he feels like he would be the only Ali. So up at the camp, he's getting ready for the rematch. And I'm to the side, and you can bring your grandmother up to Deer Lake. It looks like busloads of people. Ali is stripped to the waist, and he loves magic. So all of a sudden, he's like this, and It looks like he has a pen in his hand. I'm standing to the side, and he goes like this. And here a magic wand, like overlaps, comes out of nowhere. He says, "You Norton spies?" He said, "That's how fast I am. You go tell Norton. You can't say I had it up my sleeve because I don't have a shirt on." And he goes brrr, on and on. So one thing good about my talk tonight is it's over. I appreciate it.
Up next we have Rosemary Johns. She attended both business school and Penn State, held various office jobs from file clerk to receptionist to secretary to administrative to customer service representative, all while raising 2 generations and caring for an elderly parent. Remains an avid reader and is the author of poems, songs, and short stories. We are getting a lot of semicolons in here. Initiated a newsletter and currently conducts interviews and writes a monthly column, and often can be found in the Phoenixville Library, tapping on a borrowed laptop or browsing through its bookshelves. Rosemary.
This will be short, I promise. The path not taken. Having gotten bored with Old Maid and Go Fish, a little child learned to play a card game using one standard deck of 52 cards. 2 children played this game together. Often it went like this. First, all the cards were dealt, so each player had a stack of 26 cards. Only the top card of each stack was shown, and then only when each player put their top cards face up and side by side in the center of the playing field, usually the floor. The rank of cards was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King, Ace. The player who played the highest ranking card took both cards. In the event of a tie, each player put 3 cards face down on their own up card without hiding the rank of any of the 4 cards and spelled aloud W-A-R, war, by saying one letter while placing each of the cards. Then each player placed 1 card face up, and the winner, the one who placed the card with the highest rank, took all the cards that had been played in that round. Sometimes there would be multiple wars to resolve successive ties. As the child grew, many other games were learned, but card games remained a favorite. As a preteen, the former child learned to shuffle cards and spent many hours practicing with daydreams of maybe one day becoming a professional card dealer. From preteen to adulthood, Pinochle, 21, poker, canasta, Uno, and several games of solitaire were learned and practiced. On a family trip to Atlantic City, the dream was revived due to spotting a trio of casino dealers, resplendent in their bright white shirts with black slacks and black vests. But school, then work and family eclipsed the dream. As a single parent and later as an empty nester, the dream was revisited but never came to fruition. Now, with many Atlantic City casinos closed or closing, the path not taken has proven itself to be a blessing. On a brighter note, the game of war has been revised, renamed, and is now enjoyed with the same 52 card deck, having the same rank of hands, but with 4 cards down instead of 3, and with spelling out love as each down card is placed. The rank of cards 2 through ace is as before, but the game is won by the first player to give away all of their cards. I sincerely hope each of you enjoy your path. As long as we live, we are still in the game. And the best we can do is to have as much fun with it while we can. Play nice, love much, play long.
Thank you, Rosemary. All right, the next 2 writers are from our writers group, coincidentally, just next to each other in the alphabet. Hope you enjoy their pieces. Up first is Carolyn Morris. She is from the Royersford area. She earned her MFA from Lesley University and is a member of the Phoenixville Library Writers Group. Carolyn.
This is the opening to a short story called Lucretia's Hair. Lucretia had hair so nice she could rent it out for $50 a day, and that's what she did for a living. On the weekends, it used to be double, but the demand got so great, she began to auction it off to the highest bidder. Auctions were held on weekends, and there was a waiting list to get in. It was blonde, of course, all the best hair is. But it wasn't just blonde. When children color hair, they use a yellow crayon for blonde, but Lucretia's hair couldn't be contained in a single color or even in a single word. Lucretia's hair had highlights like sunrise over the ocean and lowlights like a forest at dusk. Her hair was soft as a newborn chick and yellow as a ripe banana. Artists spent years trying to paint Lucretia's hair, but none of them ever succeeded. Her hair was the ninth wonder of the world. It wasn't just a color either, it was long too, and no matter how long it got, it never broke or split. She used to get it trimmed just to mimic the fashions of the season, but Lucretia was past that. Now, Lucretia's hair was the fashion of the season, of all seasons. People bought wigs to pretend they had it, dyed to imitate it, and t-shirts with long yellow waterfalls screen printed on the back to satirize it. Lucretia had grown rich on her auctions, and she'd die before she ever got to the end of the waiting list for weekday rentals. People wanted her hair for everything, to take to parties and to wear for luck on election day, to meet the queen or get married or have a baby. Once, someone was even buried in it. The retrieval process for that one was ucky, and the cleaning and reconditioning bills were sky high. Lucretia's hair had been to more social gatherings, seen more of the world, and met more famous people than Lucretia herself. The hair had created a class all its own. There were those who would get to wear Lucretia's hair, and there were those who wouldn't. At auction on Friday night, the hair was on its pedestal at center stage. Lucretia was sitting in the wings, bald for now, and she was without the hair. The cameras mostly ignored her. The bidding was up to $10,000 for Saturday. She was sure it would go higher. It was, after all, the night before the governor's ball and a particularly famous award ceremony. She was watching it under the spotlights, fond of it the way someone else may be fond of their teacup poodle, especially one who could do a trick or stand on its back legs and who never peed on the carpet. When Lucretia was a girl, she didn't understand what frizz meant or how humidity could cause it. She'd only ever experienced her own perfect hair. But now, having taken hundreds of different heads of hair in her own head, donning the locks of anyone who rented her own for the day, and usually hiding it with a hat, she could appreciate the way the hair didn't frizz or curl beneath the intense scrutiny of 1,000 people. She was oftentimes grateful on behalf of the world, for if someone else had been given such luxurious locks at birth, it's unlikely they would have found it in their hearts to share, as Lucretia had done. And then, just as she was thinking this, the lights on the stage went out. For a second, there was darkness, but for the exit signs and the glowing red eyes of cameras. Lucretia's hair care manager turned to her PR director and whispered, "Is this scheduled suspense?" But before the PR director could answer, the stage lit up with fire and smoke puffs, and Lucretia, who had been staring straight at the brilliant fire blast, was momentarily blinded. As a single loud swell, the audience began screaming. The blackout had lasted only seconds, but it took a lot longer for the afterburns to clear from Lucretia's retinas. While they did, Lucretia feared she had gone blind. She blinked fiercely to regain her sight and nearly swooned with relief as it cleared. She thought, being blind would be just the worst thing in the world. How would I see myself? Then, when her vision finally cleared and she sought out the hair on its pedestal, she realized she was wrong, utterly wrong. Being blind would not be the worst thing in the world. In fact, at that moment, being blind would be a blessing, for she wouldn't have to see herself. For there, sitting center stage on the glorious and dramatic and frenetically carved pedestal, was nothing. The hair was gone.
Thank you, Carolyn, for that little bit of surrealness. Up next, we have Andrew Owen. Andrew holds a PhD in sociology from the University of Wales, Bangor, parentheses Britain, in case anyone didn't know that, and is especially interested in the study of censorship, particularly as it relates to popular culture. Originally born in Britain, Andrew has been living in the Philadelphia region for over 10 years, moving to Phoenixville last summer, where he especially enjoys being near the Colonial Movie Theater and the library, of course. In regard to literary taste, it's pretty eclectic. It includes Agatha Christie, H.P. Lovecraft, and Robert E. Howard, with a heavy dose of William Burroughs, J.G. Ballard, and Henry Miller. Andrew.
Thank you. So I should apologize before I begin for this piece. So Rupert had been working in the garden for several hours when the voice suggested to him that he should murder his wife. Thought Rupert, murder my wife? He had to confess that the suggestion, even without really meditating on it, just a sort of gut reaction to the suggestion, held a somewhat pleasing quality. Little butterflies of anticipation seemed to flit about his stomach. Murder my wife? Rupert asked the voice in a sort of playful, flirty way. Why not, came the answer. After all, it seems the most rational thing to do. I mean, you say that most of your problems stem from her. She doesn't care about you, doesn't love you, and for your part, you feel like any love you may have felt for her has died long ago. Not your fault. I mean, how can you be expected to go on loving someone who doesn't love you? That's just not sensible. More than that, it just doesn't seem ethical, legal even. It's certainly immoral, if you get my meaning. There's always divorce, Rupert mused, not really committed to the idea, but feeling that he owed it to basic morality to at least mention it. Divorce. Of course, you can always do that, but doesn't it lack a sort of, I don't know, panache? And that's true, Rupert agreed, happy that the voice hadn't said, oh yeah, I forgot about that, don't murder her, just divorce her. The idea of murder, Rupert liked that. How would I do it? Well, that's a good question. The method is so important, it's kind of like a signature when you think about it. Any ideas spring to mind? Maybe something you've read or seen? It's kind of hard to think. Okay, here are some suggestions. Strangling. I like that. Feel her life being choked out of her, squeezing her throat, watching her face turn red. Or is it blue? Either way, yeah, that's a definite possibility. Shooting? No, I don't have a gun. I suppose I could get one, but I don't know. It's just not you? Exactly. Okay, how about stabbing? With what? I don't know. A butcher's knife. Yeah, I suppose I could do that. Strangling just still seems more appealing, though. Okay, let's go medieval. What about an axe? Nice. Even if I don't kill her, I mean, murder her with an axe. I'll definitely chop up her body with it after. Yeah, I like that too. Any other ideas? Hang on, let me think. There's poisoning, I suppose. Not really into that. I like the other ideas. The more brutal, the better. Okay. Well, other than more garden tools, chainsaw, hedge trimmers, hacksaws, I'm all out of ideas. Strangling, shooting, stabbing, poisoning, those seem to be our basic options. What about a hammer? Oh yeah, I forgot bludgeoning. The hammer's a possibility. What do you think? I like it. I can imagine hitting her in the face with it, feeling the bones break. Yeah, I wonder if it's possible to strangle someone and then hit them with a hammer. I think you'd need two hands. Ah, damn. Unless I strangle her almost to the point of death, then revive her, then beat her to death with a hammer. Nice. Then you could chop her up with the axe. I like it so far. Okay, next problem. What do I do with the body? Or at least the pieces of body? Plenty of options here too. Bury them. The garden. Yeah, but it'll probably be the first place that the police will look. That's true. Let me think. What about the wall cavity? Not bad, but I've never been really good at DIY. Could really make a mess of the wall. And then the police again. Yeah, I see what you mean. So you want to get away with it then? I mean, you don't want to get caught. Yeah, I think so. I mean, what if I like it, you know? Murdering. It would be a shame to get caught after the first and not being able to do it again. Makes sense. So yeah, I'd like to get away with it. Play the grieving, ever-loving widow. Or do I mean widower? Better just stick with husband. Okay, let's think about this. She just needs to disappear. Do you think she's having an affair? My wife? Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I wouldn't want to have an affair with her. No, I can't see her having an affair. Okay, but what if you begin spreading the rumor that she was having an affair? You don't know who with, but you found some evidence. What kind of evidence? I don't know, a movie theater ticket, a receipt for a hotel, something like that. Oh yeah, I see. Some lipstick on her blouse. That's kinky, but I like the way your mind works. Thanks. It's okay. You just tell a few people in work, that kind of thing, so that when she disappears, people will say, oh, I think she may have just run off with another man or woman. Yeah, that could work, but it still doesn't answer how I'll get rid of the body. Okay, let's see. You could drop the pieces into the ocean. Oh, I know. I could eat her. Eat her? Well, maybe not all of her, but I wouldn't mind trying some, I mean. It would be a pity to waste her, all that meat. I could fry some, maybe roast a leg or something. I'm quite hungry thinking about it now. Yeah, I definitely want to try and eat some. Okay, but what about the rest? Just supposing that you don't fancy eating all of her. Let me think. How about like in that film, dissolving her in an acid bath? It could work. How much acid do you think you'll need? Damn, I don't even know where you can find some acid. It's a pity though. Well, let's not get rid of the idea straight away. Keep it in mind and make some discreet inquiries. Yeah, you're right. I still like the idea of trying to eat her though. Not in one go, and I realize it sounds ambitious, but I think if I'm really committed, and that's how this part began. Thank you very much.
Once again, Andrew is a member of our group. If you want to hear the rest of that story, come on by. He's been working on it for a bit. So up next we
Does
have...
he work in the deli?
I will say there's a piece in it where I mention some things that my girlfriend and I do, like shopping on a Sunday afternoon, and she's been a bit worried since then. So.
All right, up next we have Susan G. Widener. She's the author of 2 memoirs, Again in a Heartbeat, and the sequel, Morning at Wellington Square. She is a former reporter with the Philadelphia Inquirer, grew up in Wayne, PA, attended Radnor High School, and lived in Chester County for the last 35 years. She's interviewed a host of interesting people from all walks of life, including Guy Lombardo, Bob Hope, Leonard Nimoy, and Mary Pfeiffer. Susan earned a BA in Literature from American University and a Master's in Education from University of Pennsylvania. An editor, writing coach, and teacher of writing workshops, Susan founded the Women's Writing Circle, a support and critique group for writers in suburban Philadelphia. Her just-released novel, A Portrait of Love and Honor, is based on a true story. It takes the reader from the halls of the United States Military Academy at West Point during the Vietnam War to a moving love story between 2 people destined to meet. Susan.
That summer at Buckner, the strains of A Whiter Shade of Pale by Procol Harum intermingled with the Jody cadence of I want to go to Vietnam, I want to kill some Viet Cong. For the next 2 months, the sophomore or yearling class would be educated in, among other things, squad tactics, patrolling techniques, how to drive tanks and fire artillery. We wore army fatigues, helmets and boots, and carried rifles, but for me, much of it felt like play acting or a Hollywood set. In field maneuvers, I filed blanks at aggressors, and they would fall down and play dead. When we ran out of blanks, we were ordered to yell, bang, bang, bang. I still felt enthusiastic. No more plebe bullshit, I thought. Lectures took place in covered wooden bleachers, followed by hands-on practice conducted by officers and enlisted men of the 101st Airborne Division, all battle-hardened and experienced Vietnam veterans, paratroopers, rangers who regaled us with tales about the jungle, red ants and snakes, rice paddies, rain, and terrible humidity. On this rainy day, the instructors canceled field training where the aggressors always wore black pajamas and Viet Cong villages served as the target. Instead, the company received an informal lecture in the old rickety hall where they showed weekly movies. 2 sergeants talked off the cuff about the Army, the enemy, jungle warfare, and why the United States had to be in Vietnam. A sergeant wearing khakis and shiny jump boots explained how he once captured 2 VC prisoners, and neither of them volunteered any information. You know what I did? Asked the sergeant, looking out into the class. I felt the whole cadet company shake its collective head. I took both of them little yellow bastards up in a helicopter. I asked them what they knew. Nothing. No reply. So I grabbed one and threw him out. Couldn't shut the other gook up. I had to slap him to quiet him down. Told me everything I wanted to know. No one raised a question or uttered a sound. A few grunts of assent, a few chuckles, but no one, including me, protested, commented, or raised a hand. Momentarily confused, I had one thought. This wasn't the ethical code that I grew up with in 10 years of Catholic schools, and this type of warfare didn't get mentioned anywhere in bugle notes with its various and sundry trivia. An unsettling thought occurred to me. West Point taught us ethics and morals applied in all situations, and that there are unlawful orders. But what happened here? Who took the responsibility of command? But that was only the beginning of a crazy war reverberating across the nation on television and newspapers. Even cloistered as we were at West Point, many of us started questioning the mission, if you could call it that. The turning point for me, and I think for many cadets, the Tet Offensive in Vietnam in January 1968. The instructor in physics class, an Army major and West Pointer and recent Vietnam returnee, deviated from the class material and began to lecture on the type of war he had just left. So there I was, faced with a decision. The village was pro-government, but the VC began to make inroads in this area of operation. So I ordered helicopters to evacuate the entire village. Then a few hours later, I had my company go through and torch the village and destroy everything. I didn't want to leave anything behind for Charlie. We relocated all the villagers elsewhere. In the long run, it was a difficult decision, but at the end, we saved the village from going communist. Yet that day in class, in spring 1968, I decided to ask the question, why? Confused, I raised my hand. You have a question, Mr. Scioli? Yes, sir. What's that? I hesitated. This was a big step for me, questioning the sacrosanctity of Army logic. Well, see, sir, it seems to me that we didn't save the village, we destroyed it. We moved the people somewhere else and burnt down their homes. A sudden silence flooded the room. 12 cadet faces stared at me. I felt my face get hot. The major did not get angry, but spoke with patient tolerance. No, we saved the village. We had to destroy it in order to save it. Sir, that village probably stood for decades. We destroyed the place they called home and gave them a new village somewhere else. We destroyed their dwellings, their village. No, we saved the village from communism. We moved the people to a relocation village, saving that particular location from going over to Charlie. Conflicted and torn, I shut up. Guerrilla warfare had little in common with what had happened during World War II. The American military liberated towns and villages. Our troops marched triumphantly into Paris, to Rome, to Naples, and French hamlets. The people embraced the soldiers with kisses, wine, and flowers. Can glory exist when gaining victory took on unconventional meaning? If burning a village meant saving it, then why not applaud the mission?
Thank you, Susan. All right, up next we have Maury White. Is that almost right there? Attended the University of Pittsburgh and majored in fiction writing. He's been writing poetry since 1992, as extreme shyness prohibited a lot of give and take conversation. He finds poetry as a way to take a snapshot of the moment in time and mark progression. Maury loves how feelings, thoughts, and facts, which would never have come otherwise, find expression in writing. He is currently staying at the Good Samaritan Shelter in Phoenixville.
These funny stories, I feel like I'm bringing you guys down. You guys are kind of a tough act to follow. I'm inspired though. Thank you all. Well, I'm glad to be here tonight. I have a few poems to read. Two are about the struggle that both precipitated and was during the time when ISIS became homelessness, and then homeless rather. Two others are actually about one poet and one woman who changed my life for a positive way. One woman who reintroduced me to poetry, and another who had a profound effect on me as a woman, as a mother, as a worker, just a great all-around person. And then two more. One for the search for a certain truth, and then the search for the answer. And I'm going to read the first poem called Farewell. 2 steps forward, 1 back. I got a letter in the mail yesterday. It says I'm not welcome for not saying thank you. I kissed a girl in dreams last night. She never left and stayed throughout. A tender fantasy. I loved what I wanted to be yesterday, and who too. But fiction talked truth out of rolling dice for now. I found my failure's secret yesterday. Reality's an enemy to me, and fiction is a superficial friend. I found myself in dreams I'll have tomorrow, when I awake to give life back to itself. This poem is called Time for a New Destination. I think it's settled then. The hourglass, I mean. 4 digits each bookend the grave. the shortest dash between. Who knows where living life lands love, examined at the heart, to find that famine takes its stand as damage raised to art. It's now been settled then, the hourglass I mean, the places I'll be going, the people I'll be seeing. This poem is called I Think I'll Search for Answers in the Dark. I think I'll search for answers in the dark that most would rather find within the day. The deepest chocolate when solutions spark. That means you had to fight to find the way. I know I'll get an answer in the dark, but will it be the one I know I need? Wherever I can find a place to park and write the words to go where all hope leads. Some people fear that answer in the dark. They find it gives much more than they can bear. But every inspiration leaves its mark to yield the understanding we'll soon wear. I've now received my answer in the dark. The truth is more amazing than I thought, that trees protected by root, leaf, and bark are nurtured by the sap which grace has brought. This poem is called The Chill, and I wrote it for a woman who helped me to become a better man. I wasn't, at the time I knew her, able to put some of the influences that she had into practice, but thanks to her, I'm now becoming a better man and a better person for knowing her. This poem is called The Chill, and I actually wrote it here, upstairs, because I saw someone who reminded me of my friend. It was the night we were watching Foxcatcher on the 9th of April, and then I came in the next room in the science section, and I wrote this poem there. This is called The Chill. I saw someone resembling you. It helped me to remember too. Mind's eye the way I saw you then, curls dripping onto freckled skin. My blessings for your newer life. 2 kids bookend the loving wife. I'll ever dream reality to tell you what you meant to see. Brief understanding meant to be. A student you, a teacher me. Don says, child's father of the man. So daughter, pray you understand. You took a broken man whose heart was broken, blood-soaked, ripped apart. This teacher made me stronger, see. I'll love her now. I'll now love me. And my last 2 poems are called On the 21st, about the woman who reintroduced me to poetry, and Hypocrisy or Truth of the Human State, Opposites Attract. On the 21st. Sometimes the heart opens up what words cannot say, so you shed a tear. His grace turns lions to lambs and rivers to dams, stopping your fear. Turned you from desert to land, and where there was sand is fruit, dripping dew. So you, when God told you to, helped lay my heart bare with poetic care. I laugh as words never go where my spirits flow to talk to your soul. Once said, the best words degrade what God's truth has made to turn day from night. But love speaks its own tongue and antipodes lust to ashes and dust. When words start kissing my soul where there was a hole, well, I'm halfway there. God's words now lifting me up, I drink from the cup where you slake thirst too. Opposites attract. We win when we lose. Sometimes fall when we rise. Sometimes count the feared tears in mother's sunken eyes, seeming not to care as life spins to naught, while letting the spirit drain doom as we're taught. Do you see what your knife is? Tomorrow's day next? Since the garden tree fruit has perverted your sex? Or the questions that Job cannot answer since he shuts the mouth of the lion, now testifies free? We laugh when we cry, and love while we hate, yet continue to act. Still the truth lies in state. As the weak feigning bravery pushed past the earth, Icarus rising too high, as the sun scorched his mirth. Ignorance in 3 lessons of his father's words, while the new leaf of life brings a haven to birds. First 2 lessons, don't fly up too high, down too low. Third, maintain good position, or life cannot flow. We arrive when we leave, are blessed when we're cursed. Profound in simplicity, paragraph in a verse, makes a way out of no way. Weakness turned to strength. Christ's resurrection, chapter 15, Corinth. Truth returned from a lie, as flesh turned from stone. as the prodigal son turns his praying feet home. As your flesh becomes spirit, as the word became flesh, where your faith becomes deed, and you move curse to blessing.
Thank you, Warren. Up next we have our last reader of the evening, Rich Wilhelm. He lives in Phoenix Hill with his wife Donna, their sons Jimmy and Chris, and their dog Jolie. His writing has appeared in the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Arizona Republic, and the late lamented Cool and Strange Music magazine. He has maintained a blog, The Dichotomy of the Dog, since the time before people spoke of blogs. Since 2012, he has been a certified volunteer tour guide at the Laurel Hill Cemetery, a National Historic Landmark in East Falls neighborhood of Philadelphia, and he strongly encourages you to take a tour there. Rich.
Thank you. It's been wonderful listening to all of you tonight. The range of topics is astounding. Up until yesterday, my plan for this evening was to treat you to excerpts from my 1990 journal. You can thank my wife Donna, who's here, from sparing you from that debacle. After I read her a rough version of my journal excerpts, she said, "Why don't you write about now?" I have to admit my response was terse and a little cruel. Because now sucks, I said. I hate now. The truth is, I don't hate now, nor do I believe it sucks. I was under duress, and let's face it, nobody likes being told, however nicely, that maybe their idea isn't ready for prime time. I'm sorry. As it happens, I did write about now in an essay I posted to my blog on September 25th of last year. Here is that entry, which is called These Are the Good Times. I often listen to and think about Chic's 1979 hit song, Good Times. It is the most present tense song ever. Let me explain. Those of us who lived through 1979 may not remember it fondly. Jimmy Carter was president and his popularity was plummeting. There were enormous problems, including a major hostage crisis in the Middle East, an energy crisis in the United States. I could go on and on. The soundtrack of 1979 featured disco music, riding high for what would be its final year of chart supremacy. For some, the continued success of disco represented the worst that 1979 had to offer, musically or otherwise. Not me, though. I liked disco. Liked it then, like it now. Chic was perhaps the most successful band to record songs associated with disco. However, Chic's music transcended the disco genre, even if it has taken decades for many listeners to figure this out. Coming off a huge hit in 1978's Le Freak, Chic released its album Risque on July 30th, 1979. Risque was preceded by its lead-off single, the epic Good Times, an immediate monster hit. There is much to love musically about Good Times. The song opens with 1 second of the most gargantuan chord you'll hear on an organ, before the core trio of Chic musicians, guitarist Nile Rodgers, bassist Bernard Edwards, and drummer Tony Thompson, set the song up with their scientifically precise yet funky interaction. A pianist provides propulsive accents before singers Alpha Anderson and Lucy Martin enter the picture, accompanied by a string section to declare, "Good times. These are the good times. Leave your cares behind. These are the good times." The excessive punctuation is intentional because the singers make it clear that each of those opening 16 words has equal weight. These are the good times. Musically, that's the song. The killer bass line by Edwards would inspire 2 huge hits within a year: Queen's dynamic disco rock mashup, Another One Bites the Dust, and Sugar Hill Gang's pioneering Rapper's Delight. When the instrumental breakdown hits during the extended version of Good Times, you'll feel that bass for sure. Back in 1979, this deceptively simple set of musical elements may have seemed like yet another here-and-gone disco tune, reflecting the shallow cocaine culture of Studio 54 and other New York City discotheques. But New Good Times isn't about Studio 54 at all. It isn't even about 1979, or Chic. More than any other song swirling around my jukebox of a brain, Good Times is about living in this moment, because these are the good times. Carpe diem, people. Chic was well aware that 1979 was not necessarily the year of good times when they wrote the song. This is apparently why lyrical snippets of Great Depression era songs, such as Happy Days or Here Again, creep into the words of Good Times. For all the lines about clams on the half shell and roller skates, the message of the song burns through the sleek arrangement and sly vocals. The present tense, the right now, is what we've got, and it's the only thing we can ever be assured we have. What are we going to do about it? There is deep irony in Good Times, in approximately the same way that there is deep irony in the theme song to the hit 1970 series also called Good Times. Ain't we lucky we got 'em? Good times. Well, actually, yes, we are. Some people might think Good Times bears the same message as Kool and the Gang's equally popular Celebration, but where that song says, celebrate good times, Chic is saying, these are the good times. There is a difference. I didn't think about Good Times this deeply when I first heard it pumping out of my radio at my Aunt Mary Jo's house. We were living there between houses in the summer of '79. I was a kid then, and during that displaced summer, I listened to the radio more than I've ever listened before and more than I've listened since. 35 years have passed, and clearly I'm not a kid anymore. I'm edging perilously close to 50, and the strands of my hair are more than 50 shades of gray. I've got responsibilities large and small weighing me down. Thanks to the internet and 24-hour news cycles, I am constantly being pummeled by bad news, both nationally and internationally. In addition, as I write this, it is 2:28 on a Thursday morning, and I am currently in my 8th or 9th day of an insomnia jag that has me up when I should be down. None of this makes me unique in any way. So many of us could be forgiven if we look inward and outward these days and say, these are the not so good times. But then along comes Chic, sounding timeless and noting, these are the good times. And damn it, Chic is right. Chic was right when they wrote Good Times. I bet that now more than ever, Nile Rodgers, the only living member of Chic's instrumental trio, as well as a cancer survivor, knows for damn sure that Chic was right. Chic is challenging me and anyone else who cares to listen. These are the good times. I know Chic is right. It's up to me to figure out what to do about it. Thank you.
That's it for us this evening, unless I missed someone due to another email snafu. No one? Great. Please enjoy the refreshments, take a cookie, take a flyer, and I hope to see many of you coming to our writers group. Thanks.